Would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. All board members are present. The executive team is all present. Also, I'd like to read the welcoming statement. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting and remind the audience of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards. The white card to be submitted in order to speak to a specific agenda item, and the blue card to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Right now we have quite a few board cards, so there will be a 3-minute maximum time limit per speaker tonight. And due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. On a goldenrod sheet, and all members will receive a copy. Okay, could I have the approval of the agenda, please?
Before we do that, I would like to hold the junior ambassadors presentation and move it up to, if we could perhaps before the approval of consent agenda items.
Okay.
I suggest that with the so, one moment, please. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Before I apply to the approval of consent.
And the motion, do I have a second?
A second.
The motion, second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Public comments. Okay. And now I'm going to Mr.
Hello, my name is Ophira, and I spoke with you the last time at our board meeting about transportation. And today I actually want to talk with you for 3 minutes about racism and about honesty. And I want to talk about racism because sometimes there's a belief that students can't do well because of their race. However, we do know that in fact, study after study shows that economics will affect the progress of our students. And we know that in this school district, our students are economically disadvantaged. And one of the things that will allow them to pull themselves out of that economic disadvantage is education. And this is why at the board meetings many weeks ago, parents came here very strongly advocating for a longer school day, to keep that school day in place. Now, in regards to honesty, I would say that this board lacks that. And this board lacks honesty because after it made its ruling, board members came to us and said, this is what teachers want, and we believe this is the way to shorten teachers' days. But the reason they were not being honest was because for years, parents have asked the school day to be shortened for teachers by staggering when teachers come and when teachers go. But this board was not honest enough to share that information with all the parents. and to share that information with the teachers. Instead, the board went ahead and approved and violated the law without having open public meetings laws, and approved an item that said this is the only way to shorten the teachers' days. But it was dishonest. And it was dishonest, and what is worse is that it actually will hurt our students. And parents came here and specifically said, we are not looking for more instructional time from their teachers, per se. We are looking so that they have normal transitions, so that they have recesses that would allow them to develop. They would allow them to have lunches where they can actually communicate with their peers. We want to make sure that we keep all the extracurriculars for the students so that they can develop their special interests. And this board ignored us. And not only did this board ignore us, when people tried to speak out and tried to comment on what the board was saying, we were shut down. So what I'm saying here is, I'm very disappointed with the board, and I would like to see some honesty. Thank you.
Excuse me before we leave.
Yes.
Could you please state your position, whether you're a community member, parent?
I am a parent at Biltmore Prep School, and my position is that the school day should remain the same, and that we should be staggering teachers' times coming and going, as has been requested for the last decade. Thank you.
Jill Brown.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, and District Cabinet. My name is Jill Brown, and I am the Arizona Educators United Liaison for Larry C. Kennedy School. I stand here before you this evening in this my 18th year as an educator in Creighton School District. I was really surprised to learn that 24% of Arizona's veteran teachers are within 4 years of retirement. I am one of those teachers. My plan is to take early retirement after next school year and go get a higher paying job. Because with $86,000 in debt and zero savings, I cannot afford to stay for 80 points or beyond. This is not about me. The village that it takes to raise these children has been diminished time and again. I've watched as qualified librarians have been let go with no one to inspire a love of reading and no books. I have watched our physical education teachers diminish from a male and female team to just one with an unqualified aide to support 60 plus students at a time. I myself have gone from art teacher back to the classroom due to lack of funding to keep our special area teachers at one school site. I've watched our social workers go. I've watched our psychologists, our speech therapists, our band teachers go from serving one school site to 3. But this is not about teachers or even support staff. This is about the hundreds of children that I have witnessed pass through their entire elementary school years with inadequate funding. In art, I served classes so large I had to give up my own chair and borrow several others just so that they could sit down, and then left enough materials for them all to work at the same time. Now, my kids learn science from a textbook that's 12 years old, and that would be fine, but none of the consumable supplies have been replenished since then. Their social studies curriculum is a decade old, and that would be feasible, except there's no South Sudan on our maps. Even our math lessons are supplemented with supplies purchased by our teachers because we lack a funded curriculum. But this is not about stuff. This is about our children and the future of Arizona, and whether we're raising them up to enter a prison cell or a highly educated workforce. This movement is bigger than us, and we know not which direction it will turn, but we cannot afford to back down. We are confident and secure knowing that everyone in this room wants the very best we can get for our children. Please, we humbly ask for the support of our governing board so that not one of us is afraid to hold out for what our children deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Ana Contreras.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Ana Contreras, soy esposa y madre. Y
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ana Contreras. I am a wife and a mother.
el motivo de estar aquí esta tarde es la preocupación que tengo sobre la educación de nuestros hijos y también para apoyar a nuestros maestros.
The reason I'm here is because I'm concerned about the education of our children, and I'm also concerned about the teachers.
En esta campaña que se ha hecho de Rojo por la Educación, pienso que es algo muy importante para obtener fondos para nuestros hijos, para la educación de nuestros hijos. Hay muchas necesidades en las escuelas.
I feel that this campaign, Red for Ed, is addressing a lot of the needs that we have at this time for our children, for our students, for the teachers, and there's so many needs. There's lots of needs at the moment.
Diariamente nosotros como padres confiamos en dejar nuestros hijos en las escuelas, confiados de que tendrán una buena educación con estos maestros.
Every day we leave our students, our children in the hands of the teachers, and we have faith that they are doing everything they can to help them.
Pero también ellos necesitan nuestra ayuda, nuestro apoyo, los maestros, con materiales, con dinero para las escuelas y también para estos niños que son especiales, que a veces tienen que ir a buscar la ayuda a otra parte porque necesitan una clase especial.
But our teachers, they also need our support. They need materials, they need funding. We also need support for programs that are special needs, for things that they may need.
La educación yo sé que comienza en la casa, pero los maestros son una parte importante también para ayudar a nosotros como padres para educar a nuestros hijos.
I know that education begins at home, but I know that at this time schools also need our support to help us educate our children.
Sobre las profesiones, cada uno de nosotros que estamos aquí tenemos profesiones diferentes y todas son importantes. Y a lo mejor nos ha costado un gran esfuerzo llegar a donde estamos, a la carrera que hemos logrado. Y yo te pido que reconsideres y apoyes también, porque no ha sido solo tu esfuerzo, sino también de esos maestros que te han respaldado para obtener ese puesto y esa educación que tú tienes.
Profession. It takes support from parents, money, and lots of years of study to do whatever you can do. And so I ask that you support our teachers at this time.
Realmente nuestros hijos pasan el mayor tiempo del día con nuestros maestros y pienso que es importante ayudarles y darles un sueldo digno de lo que es realmente su profesión.
At this time, our children spend the majority of their day with the teachers, and I feel that they need a dignified salary.
Porque esto es un trabajo, pero también creo que el enseñar al otro es una vocación.
This is also a job, but at the same time, it's also a vocation.
Mercedes King.
Hello, I am here as a dual role. I'm currently a fifth grade ELA teacher at Loma Linda. I also live in our community, and I would like to talk to you guys about this current education movement. My concern, first and foremost, is always my kids. They are mine, they're yours, they are my babies. Anybody else? Hey, Mercedes, how many kids do you have? I currently have 75. I care about the well-being of each and every child that comes through my classroom, that comes through our doors. My current dilemma is that they are not getting the support from support staff that they need, whether it's counseling services, whether it's SED accommodations, or identifying those SED needs. And I'm sure that's for the current movement of AEU. They are seeking to increase educational funding, which I'm asking you guys to support the increased educational funding and give our kids the support materials that they need in all levels. It really does take a village. I grew up in the Christian school district. I went to St. Agnes, and I know what it takes and what a difference one teacher can make, or having that one counselor that child can speak to, are having those meals and the supplies they need to be successful. My grandmother was also a teacher in Head Start at Wilson School District, and again, similar economic issues. She still has her kids come to her and talk to her, and you can see the impact that it makes when you have a supportive board like you guys, when you have supportive teachers, and you have things that you need so that a child can be successful. Thank you for your time, and
Thank you. Amanda Dennis.
Okay, I'm making this up as I go. I don't have anything written down because I don't know what to say. I'm a mother. I've lived in this area for 38 years. My parents went to Lafayette before it was Kennedy. I went to Kennedy. I went to Creighton. She was at Kennedy. When I was a kid, we had the supplies for us already in the classroom. We didn't have so much stuff from the parents coming in. It was provided for us. Now everything that's said to go to the schools, every year, money's going to your school, money's going to your school. It's going to a general fund, and it's never making it to the schools. So we need to make sure that for this education movement, that we try to also get, instead of everything going into a general fund, something going into a school fund. So it's the schools that are getting the money and not everybody else using the money. So when it comes to the schools needing it, they don't have no one. Okay, that's it.
Terrific reading. Good evening. Every time I come to speak to you, and please don't ask, I won't ask if you're tired of seeing me because you probably are, but every time I come, I wrestle with, am I wearing my CDA hat? Am I wearing my special education teacher hat? Am I wearing I taught in the school district for 26 years hat? Or my parent hat? I have 6 kids. And I guess I'm just tired of wrestling with that. I want you to know that I am the CEA president. I am an Arizona Educators United participant. I am also a member of the special education department in the district, and I've worked for the district for 26 years. And I've loved every minute of it. I've embraced this district, Mackin School particularly, and then I expanded out to the entire district as my experiences grew. And I just really want everybody to know that I'm speaking from all of those hats, not just one specific hat. One of the things that we're talking about again tonight is the transportation transformation, and I know that there's rumors out there about how this all came about, and that it was CEA driven, and it was about shortening teachers' days. And I just want to go on record that that's absolutely not true. That's not where it came from. Are we upset that it happens to shorten the school day? No, not particularly. There's many people that have felt for a long time that that was necessary. Is that what drove the proposals? No. What drove the proposals was a recognition that for a decade, we were not serving a special population that deserved better from us, quite honestly. I feel guilty that, yeah, I knew about that for years, but I was a resource teacher and it didn't really affect me directly because it was a self-contained students. And I never really thought about how that happened in the first place. And as I learned more and more through our special education task force, which I forced myself to be a part of the self-contained section of that task force to learn more about that portion of our special education department, I realized just how much of a disservice it was to those students. Then we had the issue with the transportation. Okay, so in order to fix this problem, we have to deal with the transportation issue. But we were given options. There were different choices. One of them was a ridiculous amount of money that would have been not acceptable to spend on a solution. Another one had students getting picked up at 6:30 in the morning and dropped off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon from buses. The school that had the latest stop was Excellencia, who has over 700 kids riding buses. That's not acceptable. That's a safety issue. The option that made the most sense and still does is the one that shortened the school day in order to allow the routes to work. It deals with the fact that we've been unable to retain and recruit enough bus drivers, that we don't have the money to spend on beefing up that fleet, and also gets our special education students in alignment where they belong.
So I hope that you will take that into consideration. I understand and I appreciate parent voice. I think we need to look at what's best for all the students and the things that we have to consider. Thank you.
Kathy Hesselman?
Hi, my name is Katie Hesselman, and I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Biltmore Prep with the lovely Miss Bradbury in attendance. I wanted to come today to share some significant disappointment about the way the meeting occurred when we talked about school start and end time. I don't think that there was a single person that left this room feeling confident that this board, A, listened to us, B, cared about what we had to say, or took our feedback appropriately represented, and then made a decision. And I'd like to address a few points of why I believe that parents felt that way in particular. One, there was a discussion on the school day of Finland being 4 hours. It's completely irrelevant to what we do in this country, and I found it quite honestly an unprofessional example of a shortened school day because it's completely irrelevant. Two, I really appreciate, Ms. Castine, your passion and the way that you spoke about teacher pay and where your voice was coming from for that vote, but that vote was not about teacher pay. And there was not a single person in that room that I think would disagree with you, that every single one of our teachers, every single one of our paraprofessionals deserve more. This state is failing them, and in part, they are failing our students because of it. But this vote about school start and end time had nothing to do with student pay or teacher pay. So I found that that was an irrelevant argument to the point. I did not hear any points, that was why the decision was made in the best interest of students, except that we were out of compliance for special ed students. I also would like to say that the way that this dialogue was presented to our parents was not in transparency. I agree with the former speaker about rumors or this or that. And I'd like to then touch on the slide that was presented about length of school day that Mr. Mann put up. We were not given a survey asking our opinion on length of school day. We were given a survey that specifically said we'd like you to vote on start and end times. We were given 3 options. The only option that gave us our current school day length of time that was presented on the slide started our school day at Biltmore Prep at 7 a.m. Very few people voted for that because that is not appropriate for any well-being of a student. The other 2 options started at 7:20 and had different end times. And then the way that the slide was presented was such that feedback was about length of school day. That is not what we were asked. And had you asked that and presented the data and you had differing opinions, I think that you would have a different outcome and the respect the parents have for this board right now. It's all about transparency, communication, and open dialogue. I don't have to agree with what you say, but I'd like it to be represented appropriately and accurately at the way that it was received. So what I'd like to request the board is to do more transparency, more open dialogue, and honest feedback. And I'd like to talk about where we go from here. We have not yet addressed the length of school day on Wednesdays. I've heard through our secretary at school that it's going to be 40 minutes less than it was now, which was not what was represented in the meeting. And I'd also like to talk about apples to apples between us and other school districts where teachers do make more money. And we'd like our Mondays after fall break and spring break for our children to be back in school because our children are off for 6 days on spring break. So I will continue to provide feedback. My child is staying at Biltmore Prep. We are losing students. We are losing income kindergartners. I believe in this program, but I encourage you to please do better apply your parent support because we need them in this school district to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent board reports. Superintendent report, Dr. Lewis.
So enthralled by the comments. We had a wonderful community council meeting on Thursday. We had approximately 90 people in attendance, and the topic was, of course, budget, Red for Ed, start and end times, and before and after school programs. and the way in which the transportation might impact families. So we had really great conversations about clubs, before and after school opportunities, vendor options, sports, and our work with our various after school and before school programs to match the revised schedule. I attended NSBA in San Antonio with a couple of board members and enjoyed some presentations on the budget process. We were also selected to share the transparency of our budget process, and had over 20 states represented in attendance to discuss that process. We went to some great sessions on equity and the role of board in policy and operations, and just learned a lot. The Arizona Education, the AEU team met with me this week, and I just would like to say that we are experiencing excellent communication, excellent professionalism, excellent focus on students, as students are first in terms of their safety and their learning, number one in your minds. I see a proactiveness in readying options as you have chosen to join the statewide movement, and you're watching, keeping a close pulse on the statewide movement. We are watching the legislature closely. We are observing the governor's proposed budget and dissecting what it can and can't be as it translates into whatever the legislature votes. So I'm excited to continue the journey. I think that in a matter of a short amount of time, this grassroots movement has been simply amazing in terms of forcing a deep dialogue of improving funding for education. Thank you.
We have a recognition of Dr. Gabrielle Ramos.
Is Gabrielle here? There she is. We're very proud of Dr. Ramos, now Dr. Ramos.
Definitely. Good evening, everyone. I'm very proud of be standing over here. I'm being a teacher at Craig District for 20 years, more than 20 years. And I worked as a behavior interventionist at William T. Mackin for 6 years. Being there, I started studying through NAU with my doctorate. And I saw year after year some teachers that started leaving the district and leaving the school. So my question was, what is it affecting or impacting teacher retention in Craig District? Is there an overlooked cost regarding teacher retention? And I thought is discipline, is student discipline pushing teachers away out of the classroom? And that's my dissertation topic. So I started investigating, and most of the studies out there regarding teacher retention were addressing the traditional perspectives, which it was of course the economic perspective, due to the environment right now. We know it is very, very important, but doing my research, I found out that the students' discipline and the classroom environment does have an impact on teacher retention as well. I collected information through principal interviews and teacher surveys and parent surveys, because I wanted to include everybody's opinion into this situation. And I found very important information, very valid information about our district. And you, of course, are invited to read my findings on my research.
Thank you very much. Good job. All right,
One more time.
Okay, governing board reporting.
I'll save mine for the NSBA report.
Okay, I just wanted to say two things, and one is, even though I'm not wearing purple today, I am in support of Red for Ed. I do appreciate everything, and I'm actually very excited. So, it's long overdue. Another thing, I just wanted to make a correction, not a correction, a clarification. Thank you. A clarification about my comments at the last board meeting. I mentioned, I was talking about quality in education, not quantity. And in talking about quality in education and not quantity, I was talking about the length of the school day. And that quality is what is being taught in the amount of time you have versus stretching the amount of time to just have big numbers of time. There was not a discussion about a school in Finland. There was a one-time mention of the schools in Finland, only because they ranked #1 in the whole world, and we are part of the world. And that's why Finland was brought up. So I just wanted to make a clarification on that, and that Finland schools being #1, and I'm not making a discussion, I'm making a second time mention of them here tonight. Being the #1 schools, their school days are about 4 to 5 hours, and the teachers meet in meetings discussing 20 hours a week, discussing children and their education. And that's only because they're #1 in the world and we're part of the world. And just kind of looking around and looking at ways that make learning better for children and make teaching better also. Thank you.
As you all probably noticed, there's 4 of us rather than 5 of us sitting up here. We do have a board vacancy. And Dr. Lewis and I met with Mr. Watson. We met, who is County Superintendent of Schools. And we put out a call for letter of interest. I believe it was 2.5 weeks. Individuals had to time frame to answer if they were interested in a letter of interest and submit a letter of interest. We were very surprised and very happy. We had 7 candidates that put in for a letter of interest. That is an amazing amount. There are school board positions in the state that go unfilled because no one is interested. This community is fantastic. And I think you all should pat yourself in the back. Basically, I'm going to run down the process that was explained to us. The letter of interest come in. The board makes a decision of who they feel is their first, second, or third choice candidate. We submit that to Mr. Steve Watson. We also submit all the letters of interest to him, and he makes a choice. He can choose off of our candidates that the first, second, or third choice, or he can choose anyone who has submitted a letter of interest. It is not our decision as a board on who fills the vacancy. It is Mr. Steve Watson's choice, the superintendent of Maricopa schools, county schools. This is different than what has gone on previously. If anyone follows this, before they had community debates, and I believe I wasn't involved, the school district put in their candidates that they felt were first, second, and third, and the superintendent of county schools would follow that. Mr. Watson is not doing that, or he might do it, but he says he doesn't have to. So, when the new school board member, whoever he or she is, fills the vacancy, blame him, not us. Okay, I would like to give a thanks to those who did put in a letter of interest. The 7 people are John Julia, and he's from the Loma Linda district. Jeff Bowles, who is from the Biltmore Prep district. Angel Campos, who is from the Papago district. Richard Engelman, who is from Kennedy district. Joseph Hadrick, who is here tonight, who's from the Mackin district. Benita Rios, she's from the Creighton School District, Creighton Elementary School District. And Carla Riveras Cruz, who's also from Biltmore Prep District. I think they all, even though they're not all present, I think they all deserve our approval and a applause for being brave enough and wanting to work with the district and the board. And I thank you very much. Oh, I guess some other people are here too that I don't know. I did, John's here. Hi, John. Is Angel here? There he is. Any other ones here? Yeah, I did recognize Joseph. Raise your hand. Okay. No. Okay, next agenda is the NSBA annual conference report. Sorry, yeah, I'll go ahead and go first. Let's see, I was hoping my iPad would allow me to read the bigger prints, but it is not updated for some reason, so I'm relying on my phone. All in all, this year's NSBA really had a lot of, for me, very relevant and timely information. One of the first sessions that I attended was on healthy board relationships. And I felt that after the March 20th vote that was very relevant to have healthy board and community relationships, and it's something that I need to work on, obviously. There were some ideas in there that I took away, and things like Monday or Saturday morning meet and greets and other non-agenda opportunities for community members to meet with the board, to get to know them and to ask them questions or discuss issues with them. There was a huge thing about, I'm proud of us and our expectations and our evaluation, because we're on the right track with both things, as far as, presenting a unified front once a vote doesn't go our way, and refraining from putting our opinions on social media. I realized it for myself that I could have done a better job on March 20th of reaching out to people that I knew would have a different opinion than I had. And so I will be sure to do so in the future. I think in the past I've been concerned about violating open meeting laws, and so most of the time I actually come to refrain from having any discussions with any board that is just kind of letting my values guide me. So that was good for me to put the mirror up to myself as well. Some other things. Tolleson Elementary School District was there, and Lily is the superintendent's name, correct? That's right. Okay.
wonderful superintendent, and they're making great strides. They're Title I school district, have things like dentists and doctors on campus, welcome center, uniform welcome center for kids who don't have the money to be able to buy uniforms, to be able to trade uniforms. They have their JAG students. I can't remember what JAG stands for though, but the JAG students would actually put together things for they're working kind of towards restorative practices as well. They have an alternative learning campus where kids can go who need more serious behavior interventions. And the JAG kids actually provide for a lot of those materials that they give to the younger kids. One thing that struck me that she said was science is a civil right. That really impressed me. They even have implemented an infant room in daycare, which I believe is even open now to staff in the district. So again, things that we would like to see in our future, they're able to hit on those things right now. Let's see. Big thing about mental health, I'll be honest, that session was very crowded and very uncomfortable, so I couldn't stay for long. But one of the things that struck me was, and I'm sure you've all seen it before, but the video with the little boy who gets on the school bus, and the first video shows nobody really paying attention to him or caring about him, and then the second video is everybody being very warm and friendly to him. And I know that I've seen both of those things, but they talked about suicide prevention, intervention, and post-prevention because he worked in a high school district where there had been suicides and they had to actually put out counselors and things like that to address those things. Probably the most interesting session we attended though was the one that I was least looking forward to because it was a tech luncheon, and it was by a guy named Will Richardson, and he just had some really, really kind of daring thoughts. All I could think about during the whole entire session was the Create and Rebuild and how we are building that school to kind of, to implement the kinds of learning. He even suggested no grades and open phone tests, which still have me kind of reeling as a school teacher. But when you heard him talk and talk about how we retain information and how we are constantly going to this little computer for information, the way that we learn things is very different than it was when I was growing up. So just some really interesting out-of-the-box ideas. Another one is we work towards more student voice in the district was St. Paul, Minnesota. I highly recommend that those of you who are interested in increasing student voice on their campus, check out their website. They have a student achievement or student education advancement board, SEABC. There's an application process which can take any form. They really want kids who maybe aren't like the perfect kids who get straight A's and are in all AP classes. They want a diverse board, and they come up with ideas and policy proposals that they then present to the board. They have one student who sits on their board. It is a K-12 district, and it's currently the high school that they're expanding to see the board to the middle school as well. Let's see. There was another one that I attended with Princeton School District, and again, this was about the cohesiveness of boards. Princeton School District is in, I want to say it was in Ohio, and it spans 6 townships and 2 counties, so they have 6 mayors and 6 city councils that they have to deal with. But they are considered the most diverse school district in all of the United States as far as representation of all demographics. Yeah, there was so much more. I'm not gonna bore you with it, but I guess the good news is that it allowed me to, like I said, to mirror up to myself, and it allowed me to learn more about the things that I'm passionate about. It was really a great session, great conference this year. Ms. Young?
Thank you. Sorry, but one of the things I did get at NSBA was laryngitis. It's been going on for over a week now. It's getting a little old. And when I wrote what I'm going to read, I have not been under the influence of any type of narcotic or anything like that, just so you know, because I know it will sound strange. Okay, at NSBA, the participants can follow tracks in the breakout sessions. Basically, I followed the equity track for most of my sessions. And I did break off on that to attend a session on mindfulness, which was really great. And I was thinking of Loma Linda. And Dr. Lewis and Ms. Castine's session that they had on Monday morning at 8 o'clock or 8:30. But it was well attended, and they had great discussions. It was a really good breakout session that they did. Okay, on the question of equity, for some of the schools, they fit the description of what I'm going to call undiscovered potential, or UP schools, UP. We hear all the excuses about these schools. The percentage of English language learners, number of refugees, crime and gang activity in the neighborhood, parents who are illiterate in their own language, low socioeconomic status, teacher turnover, ethnic heritage, and the list goes on. With the political action that is current of teachers in Arizona and the other states and other ideas bouncing around, I would like to direct Dr. Lewis to direct the meet and confer to develop a formula on a matrix for a monetary stipend to the staff who work in UP schools. Cells Arizona used their budget as much of it that they could to give their teachers higher salaries, and this was to attract and retain teachers on the reservation. I had a long discussion with the president of this Cells Arizona governing board. So they did this, they put all their money they could into salaries so they could attract and retain teachers, because we all know teachers with experience are best for our students, especially our neediest students. This stipend should not be the same for all schools in our district. Various factors should be considered, some of which, but not all, I have already mentioned. Hopefully, this will attract and retain quality teachers and staff for our students who need them. We expect adventurous thinkers in Creighton, and I feel adventurous thinking should start with the board. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is update on the Junior Ambassador Program.
President Yan, governing board members, Dr. Lewis, executive team. As you can see by our front row here, we have some wonderful Creighton students who are going to be coming and sharing their experiences with Junior Ambassador. What we are coming forward with is a presentation that shares we came in the fall on what we were going to be trying to move forward with Junior Ambassadors, and we are here to share what has taken place this year as well as what is coming ahead. So with that, I would like to ask Mrs. Allen to come forward and our fabulous students to come on up.
Esteemed board members, my name is Rita Allen, and I am the person in charge of the Junior Ambassadors as a teacher on assignment. I'd like to introduce the students. The majority are from Excelencia, including Mrs. Apple. What grade?
I'm in 8th grade. My name is Alexis Mason from 8th grade.
My name is Brandon Lisa from 8th grade. My name is Ronaldo Fontaine.
My name is Gabby Gutierrez. I'm in 8th grade from Excelencia. My name is Jared Lafana. I'm in 8th grade.
I'm Roberto Durant.
varios locales What means the shirt changing the in 8th grade or 7th grade and from Paddle School.
I learned about the I
My name is Melissa Mooston, and so I play one of those matches.
This past school year, we held after-school classes for all the junior ambassadors, those going to Germany, DC, and China, where they learned language, geography, world, national, lessons on culture, history, and leadership as well. There were 26 students and 5 teachers who went to Germany in March, and there are some of the students from Excellence here now to talk about that. Sorry.
Before the trip, we got to meet students from the other schools. Together, we learned about geography and about the places we were going to visit. We also learned to be respectful to the people who reside there. During the year, we took a field trip to the Musical Instrument Museum. There, we took a lesson on African drumming, and we also got to learn a little bit about the African culture as well. We also learned about different cultures, mainly from writing letters to our pen pals and Russians. And lastly, we learned how to pack wisely, by making only the necessary clothes for 10 days and what to do in case we lose.
In Germany, we learned that people are really friendly and trusting. We saw that store was left merchandise outside without worrying about it being stolen or having so much to watch over it. Nearly everywhere we went, we saw medieval buildings. We could tell that the country had a long religious tradition because the number of churches both big and small. We also noticed how much people walked in Germany. The towns are set up with the downtown plazas were shopping and a lot of public transportation. Our tour guide also told us that most Germans lived in small houses or apartments. It was clear that Germans have been builders for a long time, from churches in the past to food parks today. For example, they made the BMW.
We learned about German history, and while we were in Germany, we visited Rothenburg, which was a town during medieval times. Rothenburg had a wall that surrounded and protected the city from any threats. We also learned about King Ludwig II, who ordered the Neuschwanstein Castle built in 1870. He was an interesting king with a complicated history and a love for beautiful things. We also learned the important role religion played in society as we visited many cathedrals.
Also during our visit, we learned about World War II and the Nazis' use of concentration camps throughout Europe. We visited Dachau, a concentration camp where Jewish people, homosexuals, and those deemed inferior were sent. The people sent there lived in terrible conditions without proper clothing or medicine and were eventually worked to death. We also viewed gas chambers used to kill mainly women, children, and elderly.
We also saw a portion of the Berlin Wall and learned how Germany was divided into East and West Germany. We learned about the border crossing and how they had to wait 3 hours just hoping they would be able to see their families on the other side. Now its economy is booming.
What we learned about traveling was that patience is very important because the flight is very long and we have to be very patient. But the end result is very worth it. We also learned about jet lag and what affects me from back home from Germany because the times are very different. We also learned to stay together because if we were left behind, that was a problem. A big problem. We also be planning, and it would help us be better travelers.
We are the adventurous learners. This trip made us adventurous learners because after experiencing the different cities firsthand and looking at these different places, we wanted to learn more. Most students only get to see other countries through a book or a globe. The experience of climbing 500 steps to the top of a famous cathedral tower, eating soft eggs in their shells, and trying bratwurst for the first time attracted our attention and made us want to learn more.
We also walked a lot more than we do in Arizona. We walked to different castles and churches. In Austria, we experienced the salt miner and actually used the boats and slides miners used in those very mines. We tasted salt water that was very salty and learned the history of salt mining. Thank you.
And on April 30th, we will be traveling to Washington, D.C. with a group of 14 students and 2 teachers. This has been an annual trip for several years, and it will continue.
So as you can see, great traditions continue with the Junior Ambassadors, but we are also really excited to share the new adventure that's going to be taking place with our Junior Ambassadors. As we know that Dr. Lewis last summer had the privilege of being part of a small group of superintendents from across the United States that served as ambassadors to China. And as a direct result of that trip, we have made connections to develop a sister school exchange program. And for the very first time, we're going to be having students from Creighton going this summer to be spending time in China at schools, staying in homes of families, and we will also be having students from those same schools coming and visiting us next year. We're really excited to say that we have 4 students who are going to be going this summer, and currently we have 14 scheduled to go next summer. So we're really, really excited about this new program. And we have 3 of our 4, we have all 4 now, all 4 of our students who are going to be going, and they would like to say a little bit to the 3 of them.
我的名字是 Jamie Cook。我的名字是 Melissa。我的名字是 Wayne。
我的名字是 Miko, which stands for my name is.
大 John Wang Shang Hao, board members, good evening. 我很高兴学习中文. I am happy to learn Chinese. 我也很兴趣中国. I'm also happy to be going to China.
谢谢你的忠告, which stands for thank you for the opportunity.
So we're very excited to have these 4 children, the adventure learners, and going with Mrs. Allen to China this year, and they will return in the fall to be able to share their experience with you, and we will provide further updates as far as the students from China coming to visit us.
Do you know yet, Dr. Peterson, how many Chinese students will be visiting, or a ballpark by any chance? I'm just curious. And it won't be in summer, right? Here in the summer.
They will be coming in January, but we do not know yet how many. The students that travel will actually be staying with families in both Nanjing and Beijing. So we may get double coming to visit us, but it hasn't been decided exactly how.
And I will add that this paperwork and the scrutiny is almost double for a trip to China relative to some of our other international travel. So we're in new territory to learn how to work effectively with what we're allowed to do and not do, and what we have access to. So thank you for that.
So our 2018-19 goals, I'd like to look at next year now as to what we're trying to do with the Junior Ambassador Program. The first thing is we really want to fine tune the after-school classes so that what is happening in for the 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders is unique, so that students can be part of it all 3 years and be doing something different each year. As part of the 8th grade program, we are looking at having service learning be the major emphasis of that program. And to do that, we want to do that because with service learning, students are learning to be junior ambassadors. They're learning to take care of others, to show the best that we have to offer, and then to go and offer it and be a part of the culture and yet bring something, not just take. So that is what we're hoping to do. As part of that, we would like the students to do their trip as a service learning trip in 8th grade. We haven't presented it to the board yet. We hope that it will pass. Once we do present it, we're looking at Costa Rica at this time. And it would be a full experience with cultural immersion, staying in the country, speaking the language, doing service learning, and then also having some of the adventures of being there as well. One of our other goals is to increase participation in the Junior Ambassador Program. This year we have 14 students who will be going to DC. Right now we have 21 students enrolled to go next year in April. For China this year we have 4, and actually we have 16 students enrolled now to go to China next year. That'll be part of the program starting in August. We're no longer going to do Germany because our goal is Costa Rica or a country like that for service learning. We have the RFP in process, and once that comes through, we'll be bringing the information to you. Another thing that we want to implement are country programs. We haven't come up with a catchy name for it yet, but we would like to have every quarter at each school there to be a program for the younger students, so that they learn about another country. Something with activities, something that's fun for students in maybe grades 2 through 5, so they get excited about the world as well. Additionally, we want to increase our outside revenue. I will have, hopefully, 2 ASU interns. They're coming to meet with me this next week, working with us for free as interns. They'll be getting credit for their work to help us try to increase our funds, to go out and come up with ideas and pound the paper for us to try to find those partners and help us in this pursuit. We also want to increase donations of tax credit dollars, both to the schools as well as to the Creighton Community Foundation, who has agreed to help support junior ambassadors with money that comes in specifically earmarked for junior ambassadors. That increased revenue, we would like to go to summer curriculum design, local field trips for the junior ambassadors during the school year, transportation for after-school classes and any other activities. There is a cost to after-school classes. We have a Chinese teacher now. There are costs involved. And then, of course, we'd like to try to get a scholarship fund going that helps reduce the cost so that more people can go. Basically, that's it. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned, I know that the trip to DC is 1 week. How many days, including travel time to China?
11.
And what are you looking at for Costa Rica?
11. 10 or 11.
Okay, thank you.
So this year, thanks everyone for your comments. It was great. Did you guys do an exchange per se or meet another school at all?
No, the EF Tours program is basically an educational tour.
Okay.
And so that was not part of the program.
In Costa Rica, will that have an exchange?
It probably won't have an exchange, but they will meet families and students at a school where they'll be volunteering.
Okay. And which country are they staying with a family? In China. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And what time of year would Costa Rica happen?
We're probably looking at February or March. Everything I think would be in the spring. It just makes it easier in terms of collecting the money. They're starting now, but oftentimes if something happens in the spring, it all has to be paid for by December, January, so we want to get people at that time. China is the only one that's in the summer. It's always in July.
Just curious, why this year would you say there was such a large representation from our Excellencia students?
Well, there were quite a few students that went to Germany. I think part of it, when we have great liaisons like Ms. Apodaca and we had Mr. Hammerquist there last year, having really excited liaisons who have time to really talk about the program and get kids interested helps them become more interested. And so, you know, we're hoping to have those kinds of liaisons at every site next year.
And I'm curious, just to kind of follow up on that, what is the plan to kind of spread the word, you know, even within the district about junior ambassadors? Because I think there's still a lot of kids and families that don't even know that this is a program that we've got.
Well, it's basically done through the liaisons. That's really what it takes, a really strong liaison at each site, who's talking it up, who's talking especially to students in the middle school, but even younger. I'm hoping that with our country, I don't know, passports with other countries, we're gonna come up with a nice name for it, that younger kids will start learning. And I'm also hoping that our junior ambassadors will get involved at each site to help put the program together and talk about what they're looking for. So that should help with the younger kids and their families learning.
I love the idea of the 2 through 5 country thing. Again, back to the Princeton Unified School District that I saw at NSBA. They made a point of having, you know, as part of their curriculum, cultural studies of every country, and not necessarily just, you know, the countries that represent their district, but every country that they could possibly learn about, starting at a very young age.
Well, we're hoping that eventually it will be a monthly program, but we have to start with one every quarter, and then hopefully we get to 2 every quarter and 4 every quarter, or 3, I guess, so that it would be every year, and then hopefully it will change as the years go on, so that students start building on their knowledge of other countries as they attend more of these.
I thank you, and I thank all the students, and for those who are heading on to China, best of luck. Okay, we're back on to approval of consent, item 5. I move the governing board approve consent agenda items A through K in accordance with policy B-R. Oh, yes, okay, I'm sorry, let me read that again. I move the governing board approve consent agenda items A through I in accordance with policy B-R. Second? Been moved in second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we're back. Education service, Excellencia school presentation. Dr. Peterson.
President Young, governing board members, Dr. Lewis, executive team, it is with great pleasure that we present the leadership team from Excellencia School, and we are going to share all the terrific things that they have going on, as well as an update on their signature project. Yay!
So you got your own cheerleaders.
We're waiting for it. Yeah. I might need Eric up here with me. It says I need to code.
I'm a little bit nervous given the packed house today. So many people are at Excellencia. Good evening, governing board, cabinet. It's really a pleasure to be here to have the opportunity to
present our school, the wonderful things that are going on there. I'd like to take a moment to introduce my team that's going to be up here helping us.
Melissa Yoder, assistant principal.
Josh Breezy, instructional coach for math.
Kayla Oswald, effective schools coach. Meredith is really instructional coach. Adriana Apodaca, 7th grade social studies.
And I'm Michelle Berg, I'm the principal. And please forgive me, I have a cold, and so I hope that I don't start hacking up here. But hopefully I'm not. Oh yeah, right. Thank you, laryngitis. But hopefully I'm not talking as much. I have a lot of my our colleagues up here. So as you know, at Excellencia, our school vision is very important to us. That's something that we had an opportunity to work on over the past few years, and it's something that we revisit every single year in the summer, and just making sure that we're on target with making the school the way that, you know, as a team, we really want the school to be. So as you can see, this is our school vision up here. You know, a big part of that for us is academics. So I do want to take a moment to start off by talking a little bit about our progress this year. And for that, I'm going to have Josh and Meredith come up and talk.
Hello. Along with district goals, our major areas of focus this year that are site-specific in ELA were our literacy cadre, which continues the work Gina Clark started at Excellencia, taking master teachers through book studies and using information to build collegial coaching cycles and professional development, guided reading and small group instruction, and a continued deep dive into high leverage ELA standards and tracking kids' thinking and doing during PLC planning meetings. Recently, we took our second benchmark. So these that you see here are the ELA scores in comparison to last year's AZ Merit scores. So the AZ Merit scores from last year are in orangish, and benchmark 2 this year is in red. This data gives us a glimpse of some of the strengths and areas we need to continue to focus. In all grade levels, we are on track to make growth in AZ Merit. Students in the higher grade levels are making growth within their cohort, and we know we still have to make gains in improvements.
The math data looks very similar to the ELA data. We have some great strengths in our lower grades, and we have some challenges in our upper grades, which we have been addressing through our PLC meetings and planning. A couple of things that we were working on this year in math, specifically, we did some targeted professional development on Math Practice 1, and that was to get, we were doing good at persevering with the students and teaching them to persevere, but we weren't hitting the other half of Math Practice 1, which was really getting the students to understand what the problem says, so that they have some strategies to work through those word problems that they see on AZ Merit testing and other things with the math assessments. The other thing that we kind of tried to work on this year was small group instruction in math. So kind of like guided reading, but guided math groups for targeting those students who are falling below or not reaching standards according to some of the district common assessments. And then finally, we also had multiple teachers that participated on the district math cadre that Gina has going on. So that's been really great for our teachers to go and be a part of that committee and then come back and report out and help our teachers on our campus with some of those strategies that we're learning. So collegial coaching cycles were really great. Thank you.
So in summary, in most grade levels, our students are on track to meet or exceed last year's AZ Merit scores. And achievement is still an area that we need to improve on. And it's something that we're always striving for. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about our signature program, which is service learning. And this is our vision for service learning. Service learning will empower students to realize the options and potentials they have through relevant, authentic opportunities to serve our community that are integrated into our curriculum and culture. And this is directly related to our vision that you saw at the beginning of the slide. And it's really important to us that we're really trying to stay cohesive with that. A part of that is and I know I've spoken to you about this, but it's it's become really a foundation for our school. And so that's why I really want to highlight it is our Excellencia Cares, which is our core values. It stems from service learning, but it's really permeated throughout the culture and climate of our school, which CARE stands for Collaborate, Advocate, Reflect, Empower, and to serve as a leader. Last year, we really worked hard on building the foundation. We went through the development of those core values and vision. And then within that, we really wanted to make sure we had an action plan for the short term and the long term of where we want to go with service learning as a signature program. We worked with ASU to make sure that we had PD, in-depth PD with our staff. And then we also actively engaged in individual class projects, grade level projects, and inter-school collaboration, which culminated in a service learning showcase. So we have some fun pictures here just to kind of highlight what we did. So all of our teachers actually actively engaged in the service learning project themselves to help beautify our school. And here you can see in our showcase some kids interacting with within our showcase for the school. This is something that is really important tenet of service learning, which is that reflection piece. So while our service learning projects may have gone on throughout the year, or it may have been just like a 1-unit activity, or it may have been a 1-day type of a thing, the important piece is to really document that and to really learn how that service project really connects not only with what the community and the need is, but also with academic standards. And so that's what this showcase is able to highlight. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Melissa, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how CARES has really morphed and become a bigger part of the learning at Excellency.
Hello. Just as we know that any implementation is only as effective as the monitoring and the assessment of it, after our first year in reflection, we noted that we felt like there was a piece that was missing. And our team went back and we ended up going through some more training with Nikki on the social emotional learning competencies. And that training does still continue today. And we found that we had a true connection piece missing that would give our students the how and the what and the why we are doing that service learning for our community. We felt that CARES really was the bridge. So after doing some research, we found it was important to have a program that was sequence focused, explicit, and active. And we went through, we developed a crosswalk of the social emotional competencies, which are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, decision-making, and relationship skills. In that crosswalk, we correlated those with our CARES core values, and we found that by creating a schedule of sequence lessons to support our students' needs, which I will say we have adjusted throughout the course of the year based on data, we were able to meet that goal of having a sequence focused and explicit program. And we feel like the active piece will truly play out through service learning and through our academic discussions and projects within the classroom. So in summary, we feel that CARES and social emotional learning are truly the foundation of our school.
So I'm going to talk more specifically about what the lessons actually look like. So following the list of criteria that Mrs. Yoder just outlined, we focus on a 30-minute lesson that usually will try to meet and identify social emotional gap in our students. So the example I'm going to talk about today is their self-confidence and also their positive self-talk. So we noticed that there was a huge gap in our children's abilities and then their beliefs in their abilities. So what we did is we geared a lesson towards what is positive self-talk and the benefits of it. And then in order to have a more explicit element to it, we also had them create a unique piece of artwork after they identified what would be positive self-talk that they could really relate to. And we've all found, I believe, that this open and direct dialogue about their social emotional needs and their understanding of themselves has really helped us benefit, or really has benefited us in their academic learning, because it has built such a strong connection and sense of belonging within our classroom community. And because I'm a proud teacher mom, I also brought you some examples. Ms. Luca is going to go ahead and pass around. But really, they are doing really wonderful things, and the CEL and the CARES working together has made a really positive impact on our school. So thank you so much.
So I thought that it would be best to highlight just a couple of these opportunities with CARES and with the discussions that we're developing at Excellencia by showing it with our students and our teachers in action. Each week, our technology teacher, Mr. Garcia, works with our students to put together a little news segment, and we call it Eagle News. And it has lots of different things, but it always has something about CARES in it each week. And this is the summary in October. They are so professional now, but this is in October after first quarter, and it's a summary of what they learned in those weekly lessons throughout the year.
Let's take a look at this week's Excellencia Care video. My name is Brandon. All this quarter we learned about CARES.
The first week we learned about academic behavior.
Like listen and show slant.
Then we learned what CARES is all about.
Like collaborate, advocate, reflect, empowerment, and services.
But that's not all. We also learned about time management.
We manage our large rock before a small one.
We also learned all about our emotions.
Like sadness. Here.
Like 478 breathing. And then we learned how to make a good impression.
And then we learned how to tell the difference between good and bad friends. Happy friend making.
There's a lot more, but it's a lot longer, so we'll kind of stop there. Again, I wanted to give an example, and Mr. Schumann, I don't know if he's still here. This is an example of one of his meetings in his classroom, just so that you can kind of get an idea of some of the amazing things that our teachers are doing on our campus.
And what I want you to brainstorm is one negative thought that might come to a person in that situation, and then also how you could replace that negative thought with a positive message for yourself. So start with the negative, because these are all situations of disappointment or frustration. And then think about how could you overcome that or replace that with a positive message for yourself. Yeah, please begin.
I said I was behind disappointed because nobody wanted to work with me.
I think I might feel sad and sad and disappointed. I would be sad because I'm not smarter and
the comments that other people make can really make negative thoughts, but we can also replace those sometimes with positive thoughts. One more, how about Rashid? Rashid, what is the theme that you're hearing from today, today's lesson?
You still believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you might you might forget everything that you're doing and stuff. Like, for example, if you're working on a project and that you don't believe in yourself that it's gonna work, it's not gonna work. But if you do believe in yourself, it might start actually working.
So that CARES and the discussions and the lessons that they're building in the classroom really build that 2A, that respect and rapport amongst the teachers and themselves, where students are going to feel comfortable and they are going to be willing to express themselves and not, worry about if they're having a wrong answer or they can replace those things. So it's really giving them those skills, and that's a huge foundation for discussions. So it's kind of talking about that bridge, that it's that social emotional, really having that bridge, because it's going to help in turn do that with the academics.
So this is, and it sounds not as clear on this one, but this is an example of carrying over those discussions, which actually aligns with Danielson 3B and those scholarly discussions, where we're actually taking some of these same skills and moving them into the academic side. You saw how small this is on here. Like, I can get why you can't see it.
And what I want you to brainstorm is,
and she has feelings that we do have to add to like this. She told them how she has less and added to find 100. Yeah, that's right.
So a couple of things in there, you can see Administrator has little cards, and those cards all have the discussion starters on them, so it can be a little bit of a prompt to help them to be able to do that. And then, without having that kind of a community that they're able, you heard even just kind of say, well, yeah, that's what I was trying to say too, like that they're able to have that kind of rapport with one another. And I think that really helps to increase the rigor and the thinking of the students. And then it was also a good example of us implementing that MP1 understanding, right? They were like, I think this is why we're doing this problem, or this is what they're asking us to do. So our next steps is obviously we want to continue with service learning projects and cares by developing units and things for the entire school year. So when we are going to have our showcase, and actually we've had a really big, we have a unit, last year we did beautification, but we really decided that we wanted to have a focus on cares. And so this year we decided to have a focus on advocacy. So I'm going to give Adriana just a minute so that she can talk about the project that they're doing in middle school.
So I just want to say that even though I'm the only one up here, middle school has been working really hard, and I need to give a lot of recognition to my teammates. So service learning is supposed to be linked to a need, students' interests, and then also, most importantly, their academics. And so what happened in our classes is we noticed our kids had a huge interest in the recent school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida and the movement that followed. So we decided that it was a good opportunity to take that interest and really teach them about advocacy. So we built lessons addressing the ELA and the social studies standards, like research skills, analyzing multiple viewpoints, and then how to advocate using historical examples like Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, the 1960s protest songs, and then also current marches and more recent history. And so through these lessons, what we're really trying to do is teach the kids not only to analyze your sources, especially in today's media and like the many impacts of news reports on them, but also to have an informed opinion and become like true advocates for what they believe in, and then also for themselves. So as a middle school team, we are now in the process of letting the kids develop their projects, and we're just really looking forward to see what these amazing students are going to do with that powerful voice that they have, so that later on they're going to become really true agents of change. We very much believe that, I think, as a school, and so we're just really excited to see where they take it. Thank you.
Obviously, I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting that it's coming from the students, and a lot of, and it's great that they're reaching out to their community. That's one of the things that we really want to look towards in our next steps is how do we go beyond the school, beyond maybe some other things, but how they really actually impact and contribute collectively to their community and the things that they need. So that's one of the things that we really want to take a look at in
upcoming phase of the development of this signature program. And then we also are really looking for ways to create a service leadership program that's to build student leaders, and so that we can have that transition to high school. I think there are a lot of opportunities for that. And so we've been talking about a lot of different projects that we can have to encourage that in the future. That is the conclusion of our presentation, but I would like to open it any questions or comments that you might have.
I mean, it sounds like a great program. So how, you may have said this, I apologize. How are you incorporating it into the day? It sounds like ELA and social studies, I think I heard. And is it all grades?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I believe in the model that we chose to work with when we worked with ASU. They were very, very specific about that it had to be objective based as well as need based. And so when we are, and it can be either from, you can choose the standards first, or you can choose the needs first, but you have to have both. So it really isn't limited to any subject area. I know that I'm working with Eric in the CINA department and talking about project-based learning so that we can really amp this up a little bit more. But in the present time, we just made sure that our teachers understood that that's what needed to be like the core parts of a service learning project. And it didn't have to be like, this is clearly a long unit, but we have sometimes it can just be a small unit. So like, for example, I can talk to you about kindergarten last year. They did our second grade did a recycling project, which actually aligns with their curriculum because our topic was beautification. And so they did this really great recycling project, and they had reports, and then they actually had objects for our school garden that they could put into the garden. And then our third grade and sixth grade really focus on the garden as an aspect of their service learning project. And so that lasts all year long. Then they bring a lot of that into their math and their science.
First of all, I was just wondering, as an electives, do you offer theater, arts, or drama? Just because that one kid in that video, he needs like a drama. Spot on with all his emotions. I just feel like this is so. I have the pleasure of working with Melissa at the Restorative Practices Center. And it was interesting to see both her and Ms. LeBron from Creighton School. And, they're just, you guys are all in different places, and just seeing the junior master's program and the number of kids who you're advocating for that kind of travel, and then seeing how all of the cares and service learning stuff really ties in with the restorative practices. Your stuff is just so foundational. And I wonder if perhaps that's why Excellencia, you can kind of see that you're a little bit further along with the restorative practices than maybe some other schools that I don't even know about, you know what I mean? But it's because of that foundation that you and your entire staff have laid out for the kids, and just seeing the level of engagement and their level of comprehension and the ability to contextualize like that, like that's such an important life skill that not only will help them to just be better humans, but like to be productive academically too. When you can articulate yourself that way and work in groups that way, it just warms my heart to see that. The one question I have, just because I was, thinking about that room too, the social emotional learning room lesson that the fourth grade teacher, that was like a peace circle to me. And it's so important, and it's something that we ignore throughout the school day because it's all about, the 3 R's. So those kinds of needs being addressed is really important. So I was wondering, have you gotten to the point yet where you have like a peer court or anything like that, where you've got your middle schoolers who are able to kind of like try cases and stuff?
I'm going to go, we have some practices with that. I'm going to go ahead and let Melissa talk a little bit about that.
So I wouldn't say like a peace court, but I will say, I've had, even just in today, like I don't know if it happened today because we were talking tonight, but I had 2 conversations with 2 separate groups of students. And these, like, I was thinking back to the past, and I was like, gosh, like in the old days, this would have been like punishment done, or whatever. And it was like I had an hour-long conversation with two middle school boys where they reflected and they actually came up with, what strategies they were going to use in the future to resolve their conflict. And they like wrote a compact about it, and it was an amazing experience. They walked out and they said, I actually felt hurt. And so no Peace Corps yet, but I can see, especially when Michelle had talked about looking to build that core of service leaders on campus, that could potentially be a student developed role. But we would like to set it up in a way to encourage students to come up with that as a need. So, thank you.
And I think, like, just to add on to what Melissa said, I think that the one, and kind of to address the comments that you made, I think that we bring our teachers in up to a lot of what we plan as to do. So and on any initiative, we always have a group of teachers. And so I think bringing the teachers in and kind of having that opportunity to talk about the similarities and the things that happen in the classroom, that's what's been a very powerful piece for us. And so, I just can't stress enough that it's about the school and who we are as a community. That really, I think, is helping us to keep moving forward in this direction.
Are all your students involved, including the special ed children?
Yes, actually, they are. Jessica Dormady, who is our self-contained special ed teacher, is actually on our service learning cadre. So we try to have lots of opportunities for them to be involved, working with other grade levels, other typical peers, so that they can make sure that they're a part of our community as well. So we actually have this really great thing on Friday. It's called Boys Club, and the middle school kids go in, and it's a reward time. And I mean, it is like the funnest thing. And in fact, a couple of the boys got in trouble, and the middle school boys got in trouble, and they couldn't go to the room to work with the other kids, and they were really upset. It was like a huge punishment for them that they couldn't go meet with Jessica's kids.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I just want to go back to math. We kind of skipped over this part. And I know that this was a similar situation last year. Some students in upper grades may not score merit as years in the past. I mean, loaded question, but do you think, is there anything specifically we can be doing differently as a board to help support excellency specifically, or district, for these upper grades? Is there anything you're seeing?
We are trying to address that in a couple of ways. We do have an algebra track so that we are trying to expose them to the students to higher levels and rigors of math. And it's not as successful as we would want it to be. I think just, being open and, I think the cadre and developing teacher skills and it's kind of like that compounding of experience over time. Our math teacher had a really great opportunity to go to a different position at another school, but, sometimes you might have some challenges, when you're starting new, but we're fortunate in that we, have a great math teacher, but it just, sometimes it takes some time. I think that, helping us to figure out some things, that algebra piece would be a really big one. And just continuing to ask us some questions about it. I do love what Gina's doing. I think that more of those kinds of opportunities for us to see other teachers and really, those standards are, it's rough. Like, those are some major, there's stuff there I know I didn't even touch until high school, like late high school. It's just very different. So just continuing to offer those kinds of resources and support, I think, would be really helpful.
One thing that I was thinking about too during your presentation was, it was 9 years ago that we implemented the West Ed model, which is very different from, I'm not as familiar with the Danielson model as far as, I've looked at it, but I don't work with it every single day. We have something called a TCTEF where I work, but it makes me wonder, because it was kind of shallow thinking that we were asking our kids to do, from 9 years to about 5 years ago, and so it makes me wonder if it's just them adjusting to this different way of that higher order critical thinking, and perhaps that I don't know that for sure. It would be interesting if we could
pinpoint that, but it does make me wonder, because we've seen it school after school, but middle schoolers are tough to wrangle in anyway, but like, I think that perhaps with that foundational learning from kindergarten through maybe third, fourth grade, and this is how we do it, maybe it's just a learning curve that they're going.
I mean, we've seen that growth over the years since we switched to these standards. I think that I've seen the growth in the rigor and thinking of students, and the teachers pushing. I think that, we're definitely going in the right direction for that. I will say, last year, and I think the year before, we were at or above state average in 8th grade. I mean, I think these 8th graders may have gotten Common Core like in 3rd grade started getting, and so I think, we're still kind of in that. I see growth all the time. Our teachers in the upper grades tell us that like our kids are coming more prepared for math than they had seen, 4 or 5 years ago. So I know that you may have to be onto something with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is business and plan. And the subject pursuant to ARS section 38-431.05B, the ratification of approval of March 20th, 2018 action to approve option 3 in the transportation transformation, and to clarify the motion resulted in a reduction of the student day by 25 minutes beginning in the 2018-19 school year. Does anyone have a motion?
And I just wanted to make a comment, I guess, before the motion happens. And as we heard from some parents tonight, and I continue to hear from parents, this wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if we had handled this whole decision differently. And I think, I understand we're ratifying this tonight, but the spirit of the open meeting law is transparency. And I think that we need to do a much better job on that when it comes to board meetings and comes to getting our parents involved. I mean, we want parent engagement desperately, but the way we handled that meeting really damaged, I think, relationships with a lot of involved parents. So I challenge us to do everything we can moving forward to go overboard to help communicate what we're talking about at board meetings. I mean, it's really important to have people at board meetings. It's great to have a full house, and it's been rare. So I think people want to know what's going on. So I just wanted to make a comment that I think that's the reason why it's happened, is because people got angry.
I move the governing board approve the ratification of the action taken on March 20th, 2018 to approve option 3 in the transportation transformation, and clarify that such action has the cause and effect of reducing the school day by 25 minutes beginning the 2018-19 school year.
A second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Our next thing is the presentation of the audit report. Mr. Knott.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, members of the executive team, it's my pleasure to introduce our audit partner from the firm of H. Brittany Williams. Brittany leads the team that comes in and does a pretty deep dive. Really good and prepared for the audit. So we're very pleased to have her here with us this evening to share a little bit about our audit report. Normally I don't weigh in on this, but I can't help but say, honestly, from my perspective in the many years I've been in the school district, this last year's audit is the cleanest one I've ever seen. But Ms. Williams may give you a different perspective on your different experience as well.
Excuse me, before you start, which one?
We're going to take a look at all of them. Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for having me here tonight. really appreciate it. There's a lot of very interesting presentations going on. I know that mine might not be as happy as this interesting topic, so I'll go fast. But as Jay mentioned, we were talking a little bit before the meeting started, and yeah, the report looks really great this year, and there's a lot of improvements from the prior year, and it's just really all of the different reports that you've got in front of you look really good. So let's go ahead and start with you. You probably received a letter. We, as your auditors, addressed a letter to the governing board, along with an engagement letter and a general representation letter that we sent to council. And if you don't have it in front of you, that's okay. I'll just touch on it. This is a required communication by auditing standards, and it's basically an opportunity for the audit team to communicate with those charged with governance over the school district and make sure that we're all on the same page, the understanding of what an audit is, what we came in to do, some of the accounting estimates that management is able to make. If there were any difficulties encountered during the audit or any disagreements with management, we would have noted those in this letter that we sent to you so that we're communicating with you above and beyond even management. And then it discusses our responsibility for maintaining our ethics as your CPA firm through our continuing education. And it talks a little bit about the responsibility for fraud and that management and members of the governing board should recognize their role in preventing and detecting and deterring fraud. And then we also include a fraud prevention checklist from the American Society or Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, excuse me. So that's that letter that came to the board, and I just want to touch on that because it is a required communication in our audit standards. So as Jay mentioned, we do come out a couple of times a year. We do an in-depth dive of the various areas of the finance department and the schools, even in attendance and time in attendance that has been talked about a little bit tonight. So out of that, a lot of different reports come. The first is this large document, which is the comprehensive annual financial report. This is where all of the financial statements are included, all of those numbers. And it is commendable that Creighton, in a school of this size, is able to prepare and be ready so early that they are able to file by December 31st. So that's an earlier filing deadline than is necessary. March 31st is the filing deadline. And from that, the district receives an award every year. 2 awards to be precise. One is from the Association of School Business Officials and the other is from the Government Finance Officers Association. So if you turn your attention to just page 1 really of the report, I'm just going to point out a few highlights in this report and open it up for questions. This is where the transmittal starts. The transmittal letter is just a narrative form of what's going on at the district, any major initiatives that are happening, the local economy, long-term financial planning, and this is updated annually by Dr. Lewis and Mr. Mann. Just to keep, so readers of the community can read this and see what's going on in the school district without having to go too far into the number game. And then on pages 5 and 6 are last year's awards that I was referring to, the ASBO and GFOA awards, which are very commendable. And following that, you get into page 15, or I'm sorry, page 11, which is our independent auditors report. This is our report on these financial statements where we would discuss if we felt that there was anything, this is where we give our opinion. And the school district received an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on the financial statement, saying that nothing was materially misstated. And so that's the best type of opinion you can get, and it looks really clean from that perspective. The management discussion and analysis starts on page 15, and that goes through to page 24. And this is a year-over-year analysis in a lot of instances, saying what changed from year to year, and management does participate in updating this section of the document to give readers a high-level overview of some of the major things that happened financially at the district. So that's something to turn your attention to. Following that, it's a lot of numbers and just fun financial statements, and the statistical section in the back is interesting if you wanted to look at 10-year trends in the district as far as economic and demographic information, capital asset type information, and financial
debt capacity, those types of things, but that's in the very back. So are there any questions on this comprehensive annual financial statement document, the really large financial statement? Yeah.
Is there anything that we should notice? I looked through it, quickly, and I remember last year, you or Mr. Mann pointed out a couple specific things, like any dings that we got that we should know about.
Those are gonna be in the next couple of reports that I take a look at.
Okay.
There's no findings that get reported in here unless you had a modified opinion on your financial statements, like we found something that was materially incorrect.
Okay.
We would have modified our auditor's opinion that I didn't put out there, but we did not.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is more just the bulk of the financials. And then we'll move, so there are a few different audits that we do during the year. We do this financial statement audit, which we give our opinion on. Then we do a state compliance audit.
Okay.
And then we do a federal compliance audit.
Okay.
So there's several different pieces. We'll go ahead and move into the federal compliance audit. This is the single audit reporting package that you have in front of you. And we are required to issue a couple of different letters that are at the beginning of this on page 1 and page 3. We have to do an audit in accordance with government auditing standards for a governmental entity, which you are. And so that's that first letter. And then we do a report on your major federal programs and internal controls over compliance with those federal programs. If you turn to page 6, I think that this is a really interesting page. This is where you're able to see all of the federal expenditures of the district during the year and which grants they were from and what agencies passed the money through to the school district. And as you can see, Creighton spent $13.9 million of federal awards this year. We're required as your auditors to do a risk assessment of all of those federal grants and decide which ones each year that we're going to test. And so they alternate, they rotate from year to year. Page 8, this is a great synopsis of our audit results of those 2 letters I was talking about, the financial statements in accordance with government auditing standards and the federal awards. So at the top of page 8, you can see that the auditor's report we issued was unmodified and there were no findings. And then our federal awards, that federal award piece, there's an unmodified opinion, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, but we did have an instance of non-compliance that we were required to report in this report. And then you can see that we decided, based on our required risk assessment, to test the special education cluster and the nutrition cluster this year. So those were incorporated into our test work. And then following that on page 9, you can see the instance of non-compliance that we found during the year related to the child nutrition cluster. And this was something, non-compliance is the least severe, let me put it that way. It could rise if we, during our assessment, to a significant deficiency or material weakness if we felt that it was severe enough, but we just noted it as non-compliant, which we're required to report.
So
yes.
Your reports like this one just go to the federal government.
This is submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse.
Okay, and this one does not at this point.
It actually does.
Oh, it does.
These are submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. They're also submitted to the Office of the Auditor General's office, and I believe ADE and the county school superintendent gets the CAFR.
And the CAFR also, the big one, also goes to an entity called EMA. And when we do our bonding, that's actually part of our ability to bond is based on that federal clearinghouse.
All these are really nice and well done, and like if you look at them, kind of expensive looking. So I imagine your agency doing all this work does not come cheap. I don't want to know what the price is. I'm just sure. Yeah, and I'm wondering, who pays the bill for us to get this done?
We do. So that is.
So we pay the bill for this so the federal government can see if we're in compliance or not, or the state government can. That is almost like an unfunded mandate again.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So you're required to have the audit, and it's subsidized to some extent by the federal government.
especially this piece. And we submit them electronically. Oh, sorry. Everything's submitted electronically, and then we do send PDF versions to all of our clients, and then you decide how many copies you would like, hard copies. And then,
No, I'm just, it's doing all this work. You can see it, it's, it's not a homework assignment for one night.
Oh, right, sure. Yeah, a lot of
gathering all this information. I was just wondering if the state paid for it or who paid for it. We paid for it. It's like going fund mandate. You have to have this done, but you're paying for it. It's nothing against you all.
I understand. Okay, we have
very nice.
Sure. I do have one more report that I'd just like to touch on, and this is the result of the state compliance piece. So this is the Uniform System of Financial Records. There's over 200 individual questions in this questionnaire. This goes straight to the Office of the Auditor General. This is a document put out by them, and it's a way for school districts to have good internal controls. And we are required to come in and test those internal controls. We have 3 options, yes, no, or NA to every single question. And if it's not yes, then we have to provide a comment. I will just, this covers a breadth of information. It covers cash revenues, capital assets, classroom site funds, payroll, governing board meetings, student activities, purchasing, student attendance reporting. So it covers the gamut. There's a lot of work at the district office and at the school sites with attendance clerks and student activities. Bank accounts, clerks maintaining those that go into staying in compliance with this. And if you look through it, there are some comments peppered here and there, but I can tell you that there's nothing concentrated in one area that needs a lot of attention. With over 200 questions, you're never going to have no comments. So again, in reviewing these reports and how you're faring in comparison to other districts of your size in the area, you're doing very, very well. Even with the transition this year, with Dina coming into the new position in finance, I think that that's even going to look better next year, having some consistency there. So they do a great job. It's always wonderful to come out to Creighton and be able to work with the team out here. They're always very gracious with us, and we enjoy it very much. Do you have any questions for me? Dina, gracious?
Twice a year on the audit.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. Great job.
All right, let's see. And the next agenda item is M&L budget override discussion and vote.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, and the executive team. Since we just gave some positive comments to our director of finance, join me, so she can bask in the limelight. And we're very pleased to kind of just share with you where we're at. Obviously, it's the governing board's decision when it's an appropriate time to go for maintenance and operations override. We did have a request earlier this year to review where we were at. So what we're really going to do is give you a sense of what our current override pays for, where we're at in our election cycle, and what the process might look like. And some of this is going to look very, very familiar because by law, one of the things the auditors check for is whether in October we went ahead and informed you on how we were spending these dollars, which made preparing this presentation a lot easier because we just went back and grabbed those slides for you. So if they look familiar, they should look familiar. So I'll give you a quick overview and let Dina handle the details because she's better with that. But we did pass a 15% maintenance and operations override in November 2014. It was estimated to be about $4.4 million of our budget capacity for our fiscal year 2014 budget. And you can kind of see from the list up there, it covers a broad array of different functional areas for us, a lot of them being functional areas that the state no longer funds in our base formula, like full day kindergarten.
This is one of the slides that should be familiar to you. It was in that riveting October presentation that you were on the edge of your seat for. You can see some specifics there. Beyond those things that we have listed, we would have had to do an additional $1.6 million worth of cut district-wide had the MNO override not passed. So it's truly significant. And then since it did pass, besides not having to cut all of those salary positions, because it truly is all salaries when you talk about MNO cuts, I think we presented it's about 87% of our overall MNO budget. So when you talk about cuts to MNO, you're talking about individual people most likely in the district. But because it did pass, we were also able to give pay raises during those years, in fiscal year 15, 1%, and in fiscal year 16, 3%.
And so, obviously, if that funding source would go away, that source is the sustainability for those pay increases. That have an impact as well as on those other positions that we've got. As you know, I'm a geek and I like to create really geeky charts. So this is my geeky chart for the Creighton election cycle. And really what we're looking at here, you see it broken out 3 different ways. One is called actual cycle. One is, I really need to stop calling that, the 1 year cushion looks like J cushion, and it looks like it's a dietary problem. But the 1 year cushion concept is that very often districts will go out a year prior to their maintenance and operations override expiring, because the way maintenance and operations overrides work is different from bonds or distributional systems. They are a 7-year override, but after 5 years, they start to decline by a third each year after that until those funds are no longer available to the district. With a 15% override, obviously you lose 5% and 10%, and then the full 15%. So as we look at this, what we can see is that the 2020-21 school year is that year for us, but in order for those funds to be available without declining in 2021, we would need to go out for an election and pass the renewal of that maintenance and operations override no later than November of 2019. One of the things that we've learned from a lot of sessions that we've been in, and some of the professional development trainings and association groups that we work with, is that they brought in some election experts, and one of the things they've shared with us is the difference between the presidential election cycle. As you recall, in November of 16, we did a bond on the presidential cycle was very successful. The gubernatorial cycle this next November of 2018 is that gubernatorial cycle with the governor up for election, and an off cycle, which is what November 2019 would be, where there is no president or governor up for election. In that off cycle, the poorest turnout of any of those election years, and the lower the turnout, from what these folks are telling us, the less well school issues fare, because it changes the demographics of the individuals who actually turn out. It skews it significantly older, and it skews it significantly more conservative, which sometimes isn't beneficial to school elections for budgetary items. So that's one of the other things to bring to bear. And then just so that way, kind of have an understanding of where we're at in our timetable of the cycle, and actually have some handouts for Helga for you, you may be able to see it better in the presentation on the PowerPoints. This table is very difficult to read on the slideshow. But it's basically showing the dates we have to hit if we did choose, right? If the board did choose to call for an election, the dates that we have to hit. Start with the June 9th date for us making the county aware. That's the latest we could make the county election agency aware of our desire, and the piece of aware of our desire to go forward with the election cycle, which means that we would really need to, well, we could maybe do it at the first June board meeting. It really would be in our best interest if this was something the board would desire to do, to have that item go forward during the May board. That's all the information we have for you, unless you have questions for us. And I apologize for my voice and my language.
It must be going around to everyone. Any questions?
I mean, I know that on the thing it said action, but yeah, so we don't. I appreciate the discussion. I'll let you do that.
It might be advisable if the board would like to direct administration to bring a recommendation forward for the next board meeting. In this particular discussion, we're looking for elements of what would you like to hear
deeper than what it pays for should you choose to go for it.
And additionally, we would need to engage legal services to bring our resolution forward, so it's helpful to us to know if it's a direction the board wants to move, so we don't expend dollars on those legal services if it's not necessary.
Well, I think in the past, this board has, proven that it's in support of, the overrides that we go after and that kind of funding, so hopefully continue in that direction.
When was the cost of putting on the ballot?
I don't have a total cost. I know when we did the bond, there were a variety of different costs, but we'd say $1,200 around $50,000.
In my opinion, I think we should, I agree with Jeannie. That right now, I know you said off elections, in 19, there is no real election.
It's like for city council.
Yeah, something like that. And I agree with what you say, regarding, this coming election being governor, decision, to reelect the governor or getting the governor, etc. And I believe a lot of people will be turning out, and, with the various political actions that are going on, a lot more people in our communities, in the nation, are realizing how the schools have been starved for years and are supporting the schools more than before. And, everyone's getting politicized. This is what the school is paying, and this is what the school's getting. But I think it would be in our best interest to try this coming election.
I mean, I think one of the consequences of shortening the school day, again, in the community, I just don't think there's the energy or support for that. This is April already. It costs tens of thousands of dollars to run an override campaign. I don't think it's a good year, and I think I'm surprised that everyone doesn't see that. Someone needs to run a campaign for an override to be successful.
We ran in the past with them.
It's an awfully big risk.
Ned, how do you feel?
Well, historically, I've been on the board for 5 years, and I've seen a lot of overrides and capitals coming out, and I've seen some win and some not win. But I do agree with Donna in that right now the political climate is probably a very good political climate overall. People are seeing every night on the news about education, about teacher pay being so low, being the 48th in the country. So I think it would probably do good or do well this year. And if we wait till next year to try to get the override and it fails, then that's it. At least if we do it this year, but I don't think it's going to fail. I really don't feel like it's going to fail. I feel like the consensus in the community is that we need to fund our schools more, and I think people are really waking up and seeing that. So that's my feeling.
As someone who has run the last couple of override campaigns, 3, someone needs to create a PAC and run an override. I don't believe that they just passed on their own without having anyone work on them.
Consensus of the board is to go forward. Well, what we'll do is we'll look, consider the questions that you guys have all brought up, and perhaps the patterns of past elections, and maybe perhaps the patterns of anybody who in the community knows about the action committees that have helped, and maybe they can help bring some new
information and patterns to the board as we bring a recommendation to you in the future, and then you can decide what you want to do with that new information. Is there anything else you want to be sure we gather?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to see the last 15 years of election and overrides that have passed.
Capital and.
Yeah. And bond, yeah, I mean, we just went through a bond election. I mean, there is some fatigue in the community, trust me.
That's what I
It's
said.
not as
before.
bad.
That's what I said before the last one, and I didn't believe that it would actually pass, and it did, because I felt like there was fatigue.
It cost about $50,000 of fundraising, and that didn't just happen by itself.
All right, thank you for your input, and it will guide us as we bring you the next agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. You're very cordial this evening.
Very gracious.
Gracious.
You have to be gracious when you're a Cup fan, right?
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, next agenda item under general is approval of district and governing board communication on staff activities supporting increased state education funding and employee compensation. Ms. Castine is the one who brought this agenda item, so.
I don't know how many of you out there know this, but I'm a teacher. That's the job I get paid very little for. But after, one of the things that excited me the most about the Arizona Educators United movement was what a grassroots movement it was. And that it really made a point of pointing out our similarities rather than our differences, because I feel like in this state, people tend to have an us versus them mentality, especially when it comes to teachers. You know, like whether certain initiatives are taken, you know, it's, oh, they're doing that to us again, or they're not giving our kids that again. And so I like this movement because it reaches across many different boundaries and serves to bring people together. And I want to say it was the week before our last board meeting that Pendergast passed their resolution, and then shortly afterward, Phoenix Union High School District shared their letter of support. And so I, you know, asked Hilda to gather up some of the different resolutions and letters that have been passed through different boards. And the one that I landed on that I liked the best was from Mesa Public Schools, and then ASBA, up until yesterday, but ASBA had put something out as well about their recommended resolution, and I took a little bit from that as well. Because, you know, I feel like too what happens in the springtime is the people at the Capitol work very hard to divide us, you know, and I see this as a unified movement of, you know, we had dozens of parents at our school sites throughout Isaac where I teach. I subscribed to even though I'm trying to get off Facebook, I went ahead and just subscribed to every single school district that would let me in, just because I wanted to see what was going on. And it was just overwhelming support. On Wednesdays when I've been wearing my red, I go into the little Circle K over there at 36 and Oak for my coffee, and the last time 3 people stopped me just to say, yes, you guys deserve more. But, you know, it's not just about us deserving more than teachers, right? Like everything that we do every single day is done for our students. And this is for just as much for, you know, our students and our classified staff and our families, our parents, you know, the business owners. I've been hearing things on NPR on a regular basis of different businesses who are reaching out and publicly showing their support for this movement. So I just, you know, I know that in Creighton District, I've said it before, you know, for me, Creighton is like family. And so as family members, we all need to support and hold each other up. So I wanted to take an opportunity to call out some of the injustices that have been taking place you know, since 2008, each of us in this room have felt the burden of these cuts, whether it's teachers leaving in the middle of the school year, class sizes that are totally unmanageable. I'm 45 in my 9th period class right now. dilapidated buildings. I've been posting pictures as well to show how in a district like Isaac where we can't pass a bond, we're just putting Band-Aids on things. You know, literally water was coming down the staircase during a class day, and we had to shut off all the bathrooms, but we had to still keep going. So the working conditions are completely untenable. Or whether it's a lack of resources. I heard somebody out here talk about textbooks that are over 12 years old. We're all moved for the same reason. And the Arizona State Constitution guarantees that our state fully fund and maintain public schools. So this isn't as much, you know, I mean, I hope you all don't think that we're going to be able to give you raises after we pass this resolution tonight, because that's not what it's about. It's about us pressuring the state to fully fund education the way that they guarantee in our Constitution. So we have an opportunity right now to bring awareness to the challenges that our schools face to our legislature so that we can work together to realize the promise of our state's Constitution. And as a district that touts the idea of loving each child as our own, nurturing mind, body, and spirit, we must live up to the notion of the Creighton family. This board has had intimate experiences with this, from having to navigate the issues facing children with special needs, to helping families and children who find themselves entrenched in the child welfare system, to noticing a great need in the community to provide resources and programming for all families in a diverse community, to working for a decade in Title I classrooms. We're here because of our commonalities, not our differences. We're here because we want what's best for kids, and that means we need to acknowledge what's best for admin, faculty, and staff as well. The need for change is so great that school staff throughout the state are taking action, and we're entering into uncharted territory. I'm asked by colleagues daily how to proceed as if my experience on the board affords me opportunities or insights that others may not see, but I myself am unsure. What I know is that the working conditions within the public education in Arizona are untenable. And don't get me wrong, they're not just untenable for me, they're untenable for my colleagues, my site leadership team, classified staff members, students, families, and the communities and the future of our state. So I know that while we navigate through these waters, we will do whatever it is to keep our kids safe while standing alongside our certified and classified staff and our students. That's all I have to say about
that. Would you please read the message that is there for from the superintendent and governing board, please?
Okay.
Where is it located?
It's in the
it's in the library.
It's on the bottom. If you go to administrative content, on the bottom of that agenda item of 10A.
I have read it already. I just wanted to read it on.
If you don't mind, I'll go ahead because it's late and we all have to. And again, I borrowed a lot of this, and I'm giving credit right now, so it's not plagiarism, to Mason Public Schools and to the ASBA. Dear colleagues, we respect and honor our teachers and staff for their participation in statewide efforts to bring attention to the need for increased funding for public education. We appreciate that these efforts, including peaceful walk-ins at some district schools, have kept student learning as the top priority by not disrupting teaching and learning in Creighton School District. We support our employees' rights as citizens to request the desperately needed funding for meaningful teacher and support staff pay raises. We urge the state legislature to work on behalf of Arizona's children and families and to develop a viable plan to better compensate teachers and support staff by increasing funding for public education. Through past actions, the governing board has shown that when additional funding is available, the priority is to direct it towards staff compensation. We stand ready and eager to take steps to increase employee compensation as additional funds become available from the state. We are confident our community, including parents, families, caregivers, business leaders, teachers, families, school district administrators, neighbors, and friends will support public school employees and increase state funding to educate our children and secure the future of Arizona. We appreciate our dedicated employees who continue to focus on meeting the needs of our students and community. Respectfully.
Again, just to go back to where it is, I'm sorry, because I just want the public to be able to see it as well. Shouldn't it be attached right there?
Because it's right here, mine says administrative content right there. And yours doesn't. Sure. You are logged in, right? Okay, that's probably.
So, but can the public see?
Yes.
We have
Wait,
logged
is it
in.
in the library?
It's not in the library,
It's
it's
not
on
in the
the agenda
library.
item.
Under the agenda, yes, in the future.
People who are not able to log in, can they still see it?
No,
No?
no, I have it. No.
I just want people to be able to read it, that's all.
No, and I was under the assumption that they were able to as well, so that's.
And if past the communication teams got a rollout idea to put it on the website and let staff know right away that that's the Senate
Okay,
board
great,
wants to send.
great. I just want to make sure about that. And I just would like to comment too that I really appreciate, I mean, we've lost some of the audience, but I really appreciate seeing teachers politically engaged. I think it has made a difference. The governor and our legislators have obviously recognized that. It makes a huge difference. So thank you for spending your time doing that and taking the risk to do it, and also making sure our kids are safe and learning. So I appreciate that.
I move the governing board approve the district and governing board communication on staff activities supporting increased state education funding and employee compensation.
A second?
There's a motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Legislative and political report.
Nothing.
Would it be all right if I know many of you know Stanford, yeah, Scott, he's a school board member in Phoenix Union High School District. And he's really one of my favorite people in the world. And he's able to put things in a way that absolutely everybody can understand. So for those, I'm sure you all heard, that Governor Ducey came up with a 20% plan. And Stanford, in one little Facebook post, I keep trying to get out of Facebook and it just keeps dragging me back in, but he put it in one very concise post. Governor Ducey's plan to pay for teacher raises by cutting healthcare services for people with disabilities, universities, and environmental protection is obnoxiously short-sighted and harmful to Arizona families. Teacher pay does not exist in a vacuum. Both educators and students are people who have full lives and needs outside of the school campus. For instance, educators and students may have disabilities and need additional support. Educators and students need to have clean air and water. Educators and students have gone or hopefully will go to college. Cutting these services hurts the people that the plan is said to help. The reason that Arizona can't afford to properly pay educators lies in the massive tax cuts and special interest tax loopholes given to corporations and the wealthy. It does not lie in other underfunded services. By choosing to cut these necessary services to maintain tax cuts, Governor Ducey shows once again that he values special interests over educators and students. We can do better, Arizona. Because I think the ASBA yesterday came out and said, oh yeah, this is great. This is the most we've ever gotten.
And that's my favorite. The president of ASBA was on the news.
Well, they did a 180.
Yeah, she was just screaming about the legislation, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. I don't think I would trump that up.
Have you, with your channels, heard any additional?
No, I wish I could clarify this for everyone, but no, not at all.
Yeah. We all wish that
there would be clarity in Arizona governance.
Does anyone have future agenda items?
I would like to bring back the M&O for a vote in May. Anything else?
I would like to move the school of choice discussion up sooner than later because I know that discussion is happening at a couple of different schools, and the start time is still continuing on at a couple of different schools, and this could possibly have an impact on that. So that's something that parents aren't willing to wait for until August. So I'd like to talk about it before school gets out. And the other one was restorative practices. I think we were getting an update on that, but I don't think it's on this list.
And I can say that I reached out to the woman who's in charge of restorative practices in Phoenix Union, right? Yeah. So I have reached out to her, and hopefully she can facilitate a get together with Dr. Peter teachers and Dr. Lewis and other interested parties to talk about the progression, because I know it's a slow process, and I think it's just wise of us to use Phoenix Union since they're already running through all of it.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move the governing board adjourn.
Tired. The governing board adjourn.
I second.
Motion is second, all in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.